Hello and welcome, Pokemon fans. There are those who call me Bardbreaker, and it's time for another Sunday Pokemon Challenge run. I know there was no video last week, guys. This run took a lot longer than I thought it was going to do, but hopefully y'all stuck with me. In our previous video, for Christmas, we had a successful run through Leaf Green with just Delibird, and that was an interesting one that brought some holiday cheer to you all if the analytics are to be believed. But let's go ahead and start this new year off with a brutally challenging one. Today we ask and answer the question, can I beat Pokemon HEARTGOLD with only the move Metronome? Metronome, for those of you who are unaware, is an attack that randomly selects virtually any other attack to be used in its place. There's no way to know what move we'll get, it is entirely random luck of the draw. We might get Hyper Beam, we might get Bubble, we might get Barrier, and a lot of other things. This is virtually any move here on the table. And it does include moves like Explosion and Self-Destruct, so we can potentially just end our battles by exploding ourselves. That's really not good, but alright, we'll see what happens. So now's the time I like to remind you guys that I always write the script as I go with the challenge, so at this point I haven't started playing the game yet. Everyone take your guesses down below in the comments to please the almighty algorithm, god of the YouTube algorithm, and let me know if you think I can do this or not. I'm gonna say that I probably can, but it's gonna require an ungodly amount of luck to fall our way to get the right moves that we need in order to win. So before we begin, let me dive into the rules a bit and explain how this run is gonna work. As far as Pokemon are concerned, I can use whatever Pokemon I want, provided they have access to the move Metronome. And it's a pretty short list, even in Gen 4, so we don't have a lot of options, but we'll go over that here in a bit. As usual, I'll also need other utility Pokemon for HMs, but I'm not going to be allowed to use those Pokemon in battle. Much like in my one-hit knockout move only run, here's how I'm going to break down the battles. For all mandatory battles that I must beat in order to progress through the game, I can only use the move Metronome. In order to preserve the ever so smallest shred of my sanity, I'm going to allow myself the use of any regular moves I want in any optional, non-mandatory battles, such as wild Pokemon and otherwise skippable trainers. And I'm going to set that rule for two reasons. For starters, I'll need to level my Pokemon to the point that I can actually use Metronome in the first place, but to be honest, grinding and leveling on just Metronome is going to be absolutely brutal and make this run take 1,000 years. So for the sake of making sure this run doesn't take 1,000 years, that's how this is going to be. And as always, my boilerplate rule of I won't be using any cheats, glitches, or exploits to do this, minus the small change of editing our starting Pokemon. Let's do it. So to start the run off, I've used the Universal Pokemon Randomizer to replace Chikorita with Munchlax so that we can do the entire run with Metronome. This will give our rival a Typhlosion, likely the hardest for us to fight, as well as giving us the most Pokemon variety for the run. Munchlax in Gen 4 starts with Metronome at level 1, unlike in present generations where it doesn't learn it until much later at level 40. So this means we won't have to level to get our first Metronomes. That's nice. We will be adding team members to the party later, so we will have a full party by the end of it. Since we're using Metronome for random moves, I've decided for the names of my Pokemon, I'll use a random name generator. And for Munchlax, I came up with Stanislava. I don't really have a clue where that name means or where it comes from, but it's the random name generator, so that's what we got. For shits and giggles, I decided to try and fight our first encounter against a Hooh with Metronome. We're slow and outsped, which is bad, and plus our first Metronome goes for Mud Bomb, a ground move that Hooh is immune to. Our next Metronome then lands on Transform, so now we're a Hooh. Wonderful. At least we're faster than we were before. So now I go heal up and try this again. Oh, and at this point I might as well check our stats. We're mild-natured, so we have more special attack at the expense of defense. Those were our two lowest stats, so whatever. Our pickup ability is nice though. Every time we knock out a Pokemon, whether with Munchlax or not, we have a 10% chance to pick up an item afterwards. That's nice. We get a bit of grinding in on wild trainers to get ourselves a couple levels on Munchlax. Remember that in wild encounters, I can use whatever moves I want so that we're not grinding solely on Metronome for my sanity's sake. Once we make our way to the Springfield Retirement Castle, we're given an egg for Professor Tree's morning omelet, a Pokedex, and sent on our way. Back in Cherry Grove City, we have our first mandatory fight of the game against our soon-to-be rival. His Cyndaquil outspeeds us. Since Munchlax has a base 5 speed, we're gonna pretty much always be outsped. And it goes for Tackle, and we hit back hard with the same type attack bonus Vice Grip from Metronome. Cyndaquil then goes for Leer as our Metronome sets up a Sunny Day. We get hit by a critical hit tackle and our health is starting to dwindle as Metronome goes for Lunar Dance, whatever that is, and another tackle starts making this close, but our final Metronome lands on Egg Bomb, which hits and scores us the win. We make our way back to Professor Tree, who graciously takes our egg and vows to keep it for a while, or maybe just long enough to poach it with a nice hollandaise sauce. With the blessing from our mom and the professor, we set out on our adventure for realsies this time. As always with our adventures, our first step is to stop and catch a Hooh for Fly later, nicknaming it Flapsity the 42nd, long may she fly, and then grab a Spinnerack for Flash later, nicknaming it Flashelius the 42nd, long may she shine, and proceed out of town. The first real mandatory fight on our adventure now is against this youngster with one lone Rattata, and boy is it an interesting one. We get in a couple of licks to start the fight with a Fury Cutter and an Air Slash, and it's starting to look promising. We then land a Sleep Powder to put it to sleep before promptly wasting a load of turns. We miss a Thunder, we set up an Aqua Ring, we use Slack Off, and it's just getting funny as crap now. We finally land a Wake Up Slap to bring down the rat, but man, that was an interesting set of circumstances. This is not a good omen. Once we heal up and replenish our metronomes, we move on to the next mandatory fight just past that one. We start off nice with a Howl, then get an ineffective Magnitude before perhaps the most ironic move we could have gotten in extreme speed brings down the Pidgey. We then land a Thunder Fang to finish off the Rattata. We make our way into Violet City and decide to try my hand at Sprout Tower. It's slow going, but mostly uneventful, though at one point while fighting a mandatory Bellsprout, we land on Absorb, probably the absolute worst move we could have gotten against a Bellsprout. But hey, it was a critical hit at least. And after spending a ton of time trying to fight against this guy on the right, instead of just taking a few steps to the left and moving around him, I then spend a lot more time defeating this Elder at the top. We just keep getting bad luck and we're not able to finish off the Hoot. I finally get some good rolls and finally bring him down, but man, I'm already regretting this challenge. Next up is Faulkner, and we have a real tricky pickle here. Not only do we have to get our metronome to pick a move that actually works, but we have to have it hit through sand attacks that we're getting slammed with from the Pidgey. Finally, I get a lucky hit with a Poison Jab and bring down the Pidgey, and then another lucky hit with a high jump kick to bring down Pidgeotto for the win. Now we have our first badge in the book. Plus at this point we can add the second member of our team. In the Pokemon is one of Professor Tree's aides who delivers us an egg. I wonder what Pokemon will hatch from it. Comment down below to please Algoris. From here we go straight to Azalea Town and it's time to clear out the local Slowpoke well. Nothing here is particularly difficult for us, though we do have to head back to the Pokemon Center to heal up and replenish power points. Probably for the most eventful part of this was that we got one shot in with Payday, which lets us get an extra $80 for clearing out the well. Free money is also nice, hashtag where's my stimulus check. Next up we have our mandatory gym battle against gym leader Bugsy, and he's a real treat. We actually have major issues dealing with Scyther. It hits really hard with U-Turn, a 70 power same type attack bonus bug move on Scyther, and we just have some real issues dealing with it. I make attempt after attempt, but I'm just not having a lot of luck. When I finally get a run, it is of course the run where I didn't take my finger off the speed up trigger because I was distracted by Walking Dead killing off Carl. Spoiler alert. But here's what apparently happened. We hit hard against Scyther with the same type attack bonus Stomp, and finally get a fire move with Overheat. Metapod's next, and I get off a sand attack before a multi-hit double slap brings it down. Last out is Kakuna, which poisons us before we land on Rollout and secure the win just before we would have fainted from the poison damage. With that out of the way, we're not in the clear yet though. We have another mandatory fight to get out of town, this one against our rival Tim, and he does take a few tries. The biggest problem here is his Ghastly, which is out first. Specifically that it either hits us with Curse, which gives us about 3 turns to win, or it hits us with Spite, which chunks nearly half of our power points away from Metronome. Finally I get a run where we manage to get off an extra Sensory against the Ghastly and bring it down quickly. Next up is Zubat, which is also poison type, and we get off another Psychic move to bring it down. Finally last out is Quilava, how nice that his starter has evolved, and we're looking pretty good on health. We get an awesome roll for Aqua Jet, but it doesn't do as much as I expected, so we're still in this fight. We miraculously get off a Surf for our next Metronome, but even that still isn't enough to bring down the damn Quilava. We're hanging in there though when we land an Ice Punch of all types to get, and we bring down the Fire Pokemon for the win. And with that, the game opens up a bit for us and we can get into Ilex Forest where we have to track down 2 wayward Farfetch'ds. While tracking down the second one, our egg starts to hatch. Last chance to call it, it's Youngster Joey! It's Togepi! We fire up the old random name generator which gives us a male name in Mapia, which apparently is Lakota for Cloud Sky. Well, alright then. We're bashful in nature, so neutral stat gains. Our ability is Serene Grace, which basically doubles the % chance of an attack's additional effects activating. So in other words, something like Psychic, which has a 10% chance to lower special defense stats, will have 20% now. That's actually a really good ability for Togepi since our metronome could let us get any number of moves with secondary effects here. We have to level first though before we can learn it, so time to level up to 6 we go. Fortunately, Togepi already has extra sensory, so that's pretty good for us to get leveled up quickly on the wild Pokemon. While doing so, I stop and catch a Paris for Cut later, nicknaming it Snipticus the 42nd, long may he cut, and with a bit of grinding we make our way into Goldenrod City. We make a pass at Whitney, and after some nice back and forth with her Clefairy, which culminates in our not only rolling a guillotine, but also landing it for the knockout. Against her Miltank though, we just don't have nearly as much luck though. And after 4 or 5 attempts, I'm not really having any luck. I struggle to get past Clefairy, let alone deal with the Miltank. Let's level up a bit and try again. We managed to dispatch the Clefairy with ease this time before being locked into a battle of attrition with the Miltank. Just when I think I've caught a break by poisoning the damn cow, she has a Cure-All Berry. Well, fan-tiddly-tastic. Even after multiple attempts, we just don't get a lot of successful inroads here. So I decided to squeeze a couple more levels out of both of the Pokemon on my team. And as luck would have it, within just a couple extra levels, both of our Pokemon evolve. Togepi into a Togetic and Munchlax into a Snorlax. Now that we're armed with some better stats, we should be able to deal with Whitney a lot better. Well, and wouldn't you know, when you're armed with better stats and better Pokemon, you get better results. We wind up with a Leech Seed on our head at one point, forcing us to do some timely swapping. One advantage of having multiple Pokemon on our runs is that we can swap to remove stuff like that. Fortunately, we're able to deal with the Clefairy though. It does take most of our Togetic's points to do it. Snorlax is out to finish it with a Skull Bash though, and finally it moves down to Snorlax versus Miltank, and our extra HP keeps us in the fight long enough to land a Psychic and a Razor Wind to finally bring down the cow. Whew, that was a lot more challenging than I thought. But now that we've evolved, we can finally breed, and breed we shall. So I go catch up a Ditto, and it's time for some baby making. Once I get 2 eggs from the daycare, I start walking around until they hatch. On the way to Ecruteak City, we actually have a mandatory battle here. It's either against these 2 girls at once as a double battle, or one at a time if I go in with 1 Pokemon. I don't really have enough Metronomes for a solo run, so I decide to get as many Metronome users as I can in case we get disabled, which is a very real chance with these 2. Another Togepi hatches first, it's male, so I go for the RNG name, and we get Sigimar. Finally Snorlax hatches, and oh. Well, I thought bred Pokemon got the movesets of their parent Pokemon. Well, that didn't work out. Crap. Well, into the box you go, I don't need you. At this point now, I have a long and hard-fought battle against the 2 girls here with their Clefables and Wigglytuffs, and we're just able to make it into Ecruteak City, and it's time to take on the next rival fight in Burnt Tower. And it's another battle of attrition. We just have to get lucky enough to deal damage to him and bring him down. Unfortunately for us though, at one point in the battle we roll ourselves a Fling, which causes us to throw our Quick Claw. I actually did win the battle, but I didn't realize the item gets consumed, so I have to reset the battle and try again so I don't lose that Quick Claw. But you know what, before we do, let's go roll and make another baby. So after a brief foray for some Ditto on Togetic action, we wind up with another Togepi, which we roll up the RNG named Duncan for. I immediately stick the Soothe Bell on it and start leveling it up. We try our fight in the Burnt Tower again, and this time we manage to get some pretty solid luck on our rolls. Our Togepi still hasn't evolved yet, this one must really not like us, even despite the Soothe Bell, and we finally close out the fight against our rival Tim Squilava with a Draco Meteor for the win. With that, Morty will now go back to the gym and do his job. And with our first attempt into the gym, here's where I ran into a problem that I did not foresee. This first trainer is mandatory, and her Ghastly locks us in with Mean Look so we can't swap out, and it spites away all of our Metronomes, so we wind up stuck in a fight with no moves to use. Guess we're gonna have to reset in those instances. This is probably gonna require us to have a full party to deal with. I'm just not really sure how lucky we can get here. I never thought I'd say this, but I wish curse damage would kill us faster. We can't swap out once we get Mean Looked unless we manage to land on something like Roar or Whirlwind to force them out, or something like U-Turn to get us out of the fight. So I either need to 1 or maybe 2-shot the Ghastly, or we're really gonna have a lot of trouble thanks to its spite. So I decided the best bet is to fill out my party with Metronome users for this gym, since there's gonna be so many Ghastly spiting, cursing, and mean looking us. And this takes an ungodly number of attempts. I actually didn't keep track, I probably should have. Mostly due to the fact that we keep getting normal or fighting moves against the ghosts. And when we aren't getting moves that are ineffective like fighting and normal, we're getting crap like Memento that just knock our own asses out. Finally we get it down to 1 Ghastly, it cuts its HP in half with Curse, and we roll and land on a Spatial Rend to finally end the fight. Against just the first trainer in the gym. That took way too long. Where we wound up dragging our feet against the first trainer, the rest of his trainers aren't that bad. They're either first or second try victories that don't take nearly as long. Riding those wins into our first fight against Morty though, we start off by not doing nearly half badly against him. Eventually our luck takes a bad turn though when Snorlax Metronomes into a self-destruct that doesn't hit ghosts, and from there we get locked into a battle against Gengar, whose only move to hit us is Confused Ray and Hypnosis, before we burn like 7 or 8 of our Metronomes on normal moves and have to reset thanks to Mean Look. But surprisingly, not long after that, we get a run that starts to look kind of promising. We've pretty much got our entire party left by the time we get to his Gengar, but we don't have a lot of power points though. I ultimately decided to try my luck with Snorlax because if we're gonna hit hard with anything we get lucky enough to land on, it's gonna be with Snorlax. It's still not the easiest time we've ever had, and we have to get decently lucky of course, but eventually, finally, after an ungodly amount of time in this ghost gym, we roll Outrage, a 120 base power, 100% accurate dragon move that brings down the Gengar and wins us the fight. Hallelujah, holy shit, where's the Tylenol? From there we make our way south to Olivine City where we fish up something for Surf. We find a Staryu here, nicknaming it Aquades the 42nd, long may they swim, and we head down to Cianwood City. So our first goal here is actually a shopping trip. We have to collect the secret man juice from this guy's pharmacy so that the Lighthouse Ampharos will feel better. But while we're here, we take a crack at Chuck at the fighting gym. And though he only has 2 Pokemon, we're not exactly at a great advantage here. His Primeape has Rock Tomb, which our Togetics are all weak to. Once we get access to Clefairy, I'll be able to add a bit more type variety, at least removing the flying type out of the equation, that is. We end up locking him into a nice little song and dance where we end up confusing and paralyzing him before we can bring him down. The Poliwrath that's out next isn't the hardest problem either, and we managed to fortunately bring it down without too much incident. Once we poisoned it with Sludge, the AI seemed to give up on trying to use Focus Punch, though that does speak to a problem we're going to really have to watch out for: fighting type Pokemon. In any event, that's another badge in the book, and now we can go back to Olivine City. After healing up the sick Ampharos and getting Jasmine to get her steel butt back to the gym, we run into a major problem. While we get lucky with a Bone Meringue on the Magnemite to bring it down quickly, all 5 of our Togetics are weak to Thunderbolt and will be one-shot here. We actually do make it to the Steelix a couple of times, but we get locked into Thrash and don't really have much luck. We even roll a Frustration at one point that appears to do literally 0 damage. Let's level up a bit and try again. So if you've seen any of my Gen 4 runs, one of my choice leveling spots down here is just south of the Safari Zone in Cianwood City. It's full of relatively decently leveled Pokemon for the area, and it's close to a Pokemon Center. While down here, the second Safari Zone challenge opens up, which allows me to rearrange the zones and put down a meadow area. This allows me to finally catch Clefairy to open our team up a bit, so we can at least have 2 members that are not weak to Rock. I decide instead at this point to go to Mahogany Town and deal with the red Gyarados so that we can get its red scale. With this, I can go back to Mr. Pokemon's house to get the experience share. I've never gotten this before in any of my other runs, again usually because they're solo, but I stick it on the Clefairy to start getting it some XP. It isn't going to learn Metronome until level 31, so it has a ways to go. In the meantime, I fly back to Mahogany Town to deal with some Team Rocket shenanigans. The Team Rocket HQ isn't really much to shake a stick at. I decide to use Metronome most of the way through, regardless of whether the trainers were mandatory or not. Ultimately, we make our way through the hideout and eliminate the seedy underbelly of society here. Now we can move on to the Ice Gym, and unfortunately for us, we just aren't having a lot of luck. Our stats are pretty bad, we don't really have the levels, and Price's Pokemon no rest, and he has Hyper Potions, so we're just stuck not doing enough damage fast enough, and we're also weak to the ice moves too. That's always good. Let's go level up and come back. I really hate that that's our only strategy. So after spending a fair bit of time leveling everyone up to 40, we try to get Price once again. Clefairy has quickly come along and is now leading our team in levels, so I put EA out first. Don't ask me why we got EA, that was what the random name gave me. We get super lucky and land on a Sheer Cold right away to bring down the seal in one hit. From there we have a little back and forth with the Piloswine, getting in a bit of a psychic damage, but eventually going down. Stanislava comes out, and despite its beefy HP, it doesn't really do much but hurt the Piloswine. We hilariously swapped the Hail out for a Sandstorm, but the Piloswine is unaffected either way, since it's an ice ground type, so it didn't help at all. Eventually we wind up frozen and get taken down. Togetic to the rescue though, as we come out swinging hard with a Petal Dance which brings down the Piloswine, and last out is Dugong, and we're locked into a super effective move. But not only are we locked in, we land for a crit, and boom, there it is. We've done it. We made it past Price and secured another badge. Speaking of another badge, it's time to go back to Olivine City and try to deal with Jasmine. Clefairy versus Magnemite to start out, and we get lucky and hit it hard with Rock Wrecker to finish it off with a Bone Rush. Another Magnemite is out next, and though it does some big damage to our team, we're actually able to land a Magma Storm to bring it down. After that though, it's just a Steelix, but our team isn't exactly a strong contender here. One by one, Steelix whittles us down, and there's not a lot I can do but watch it happen. I make a little bit of a dent here and there, but it doesn't exactly go our way. We're finally down to the last Togetic, Sigimar, and I guess this is how we're going to win our key battles. We land Petal Dance again, and not only does it land, but it lands for a crit once again, bringing down the Steelix for the win. What are the odds of that? Finishing 2 gym matches in the exact same way with an exact same critical hit using Metronome. Well, that's pretty awesome. So now this is the part of the layer cake where we have to go on an adventure clearing Team Rocket out of the Goldenrod City once again. Team Rocket itself, as per usual, isn't much of a problem, but the bigger issue is the rival fight while searching for the real radio tower boss. We don't start out well against the Golbat with a double resisted absorb, but eventually land a Volt Tackle for the win. From there, the rest of his team isn't an insane obstacle, but it just takes a lot of time before we land the move we need. Again, there's not really a lot of strategy in this run, it's just hitting A until we land a move that will work. It's one of the reasons I left animations on this time though, so that we could at least enjoy the view while playing. Eventually we Aura Sphere the Sneasel and then make things a little hard on ourselves as we roar the Quilava away into a Haunter. And honestly, that's one of the reasons Metronome fights take so long. Ghosts. They're immune to normal and fighting, and they also have Levitate, so they're immune to ground type moves as well. Finally though, we've dealt with the Haunter and can move back to the Quilava. And though it has just the bare minimum scrap of health left, Quilava starts eating away at us and really makes us a lot closer than it should have been. Finally though, I land a Roar of Time, and channeling our inner Dialga, we beat the rival and win the fight. Next on the docket is the Dragon Gym and the leader Claire. Things don't exactly get off to a great start as we immediately memento our Snorlax out of the fight against the Gyarados. We then find that we can't even one-shot the Gyarados with a quad-effective Thunderbolt. Alright, we need some levels to make up for our stats being so bad. Finally, after what feels like forever, I come back to Claire with our entire party up at level 50. And out first is Gyarados again, and our opening salvos aren't exactly encouraging. We keep landing stuff like bug moves that are resisted. Gyarados does seem to prefer Dragon Rage, which is okay. It will always do 40 damage and will never crit, so even our Togetix can withstand at least 2 before going down. Ultimately, Claire does something I haven't seen her do before, and she eventually swaps into one of her Dragonairs. I guess because she just really wanted to start being able to use Thunder Wave. So it should be noted that this fight takes forever, and I'm starting to get worried as her Kingdra comes out, but surprisingly that one doesn't take nearly as long to deal with as I expect. We finally get an electric attack and bring it down. But now it's back to Gyarados, and we're out of Metronomes on our last Togetic, so we have to swap back to Snorlax. We keep whittling down the Gyarados, but by the grace of Algoris, we roll up a self-destruct. Not only does that move hit hard, but we get a same type attack bonus from it and we bring down Gyarados. And thank the maker we have that one little tattered Togetic left in the party, so the self-destruct didn't end the fight for us. In any case, that's the final miraculous win we need, and now we've gotten our last badge. Thank God. But Claire is being a bitchy dude, so before we get the badge, we have to go take a standardized test, so we have to go buy a Scantron form, and while we're at it, stop and catch a Graveler for strength to continue our lineage, nicknaming it Bicepticus the 42nd. Long may he live, and then we can go get our next badge. Once we take and pass our ACT with a flying score of 36, we get our badge, and the next task on our list is to deal with the Kimono Girls back in Ecruteak City. And this does not go well. Needless to say, I just get obliterated here. I have to face all 5 evolutions in a row without healing, and I just can't. We're slower than Umbreon and Espeon, and we just barely managed to get to Flareon before we encored it into a Fire Blast. Alright, if we can't beat these girls, we're sure as crap aren't going to be able to beat the Elite Four. Time for some more levels. So after another batch of grinding south of the Safari Zone, I get my entire squad up to level 60. I've also gone and acquired the only Moonstone in Johto at this point in the Ruins of Alph and evolved Iya into Clefable. That should boost our stats a bit and at least make us a bit bulkier. So now it's back to the Kimono Girls, and we start out pretty optimistically as we land a Bug Buzz right away against the Umbreon, but it's not quite a one-shot. We wind up confused and swapping to eliminate it and eventually landing a close combat to end it. A bit overkill at that point, but I'll take it. Espeon is out next and it outspeeds until we land a Cotton Spore to chunk that speed and then finally bring it down. Flareon's out next and we outspeed to land a same type attack bonus stop and one-shot it. That's nice. Jolteon is next and it paralyzes us in what would ultimately prove futile as we never wound up paralyzed, and we bring it down. Last out is Vaporeon, which hits us with a few surfs, but we hit hard with a Judgment and then finish it off with a Stone Edge, and after much work and effort, we beat the Kimono Girls. But we're definitely going to need some major PowerPoint improvements if we have any hope of being able to get through the Elite Four. One problem at a time though, that's for future Bard Breaker. So next on our agenda is to go to the Whirl Islands and take care of Lugia. Or at least it would be if I were playing Soul Silver, a fact I eventually remembered after a lot of pointless wandering through the islands. Once I remember that I'm actually playing Heart Gold, it's time to venture through the Burnt Tower to face down Ho-Oh. And though we lose our Snorlax in the process, our Togetic is up for the challenge. I take a big damage from Fire Blast before going into Bide. Fortunately, Ho-Oh misses its next salvo and we got a 2-turn Bide, and we survive another Fire Blast on 5 HP to unleash double the damage back and win the fight. With that out of the way, we can now proceed through Victory Road and make our way into the Elite Four. While spelunking our way through Victory Road, we have one final rival fight against Tim, and despite being down 2 Metronome users, we actually win this fight on our first attempt thanks to some magnificent rolls of Hydro Pump, Heat Wave, Lava Plume, and even a Shadow Force. With those amazing moves in tow, we're able to quickly dispatch Tim's team with relative ease. I gotta say it's a relief to see that after such a rough time getting here, but this game is about to get a whole lot harder. So before I even make an attempt at Elite Four, it's time for some housekeeping. I go around the region and pick up every PowerPoint up, Ether, and Elixir that I can find. We're only allowed to use one move through the entire Elite Four, so we need every PowerPoint advantage we can get here. I'm also taking the time to get my entire squad up to level 70 to give this a try. Psychic Trainer Will is up first, and he has a Xatu out first. Doesn't exactly get off to a roaring start as we open with a Zen Headbutt and a Gust, both resisted. Ultimately, his Xatu likes to U-turn out and send in something else, and that actually works to our advantage as it swaps into Executor just in time to get hit in the face by an Aurora Beam. The rest of Will's team is mostly a waiting game as we end up with moves like Light Screen that just end up prolonging this out. Eventually we make it down to his final Slowbro, and though we burn it with a Sacred Fire, by the time we whittle it down, it gets full restored and we just have to keep rolling until we get some special moves to bring it down. It seemed like it just wanted to keep boosting its defensive stats with Curse over and over. Finally we get a Thunder Shock and a Petal Dance, and that's enough to finish it off and get our first victory in the Elite Four, but we had to use a lot of power points to do it. Up next is Koga, the poison member of the Elite Four, and just like before, we don't start off very well against Ariados. We set up a couple of resisted grass moves, and then we land a Fling that throws away our experience share. Yeah, alright, we're gonna reset and try that again. On with our second attempt at Koga, and this is just a PowerPoint hemorrhage. Koga's gimmick is that he of course loves to poison you and then set up massive evasion buffs to keep you from hitting him. This is just as brutal as you imagine in a run where you can't control what you're trying to hit him with. Unbelievably, we keep rolling up grass moves against these poison and bug types, though we did get lucky with a quad effective eruption against the Fortress. Hilariously, or damn annoyingly, depending on if you're the one playing or not, against his muck, we not only roll up a Toxic, but a Smog as well. And you can't poison a poison type, but thanks for playing. Actually, I think you might be able to with Twin Needle back in Gen 1, I can't remember. Anyway, ultimately it's a sprint to the finish that he's winning as we're fast running out of team and power points and outlasted his Venomoth. And here's where I run into a conundrum. I roll up a Transform and transform into the Venomoth. This removes my ability to use Metronome. I opt to go ahead and just use one of Venomoth's moves, in this case Psychic, to finish the fight. But you all will have to let me know what you think about that. I personally think it's fair game. Transform gives you the random moves and you take what you get. In this case, RNGesus handed us a new set of moves to use. I actually asked Arantula, some people in my Discord, and my fiance, and they all agreed that if I rolled up a Transform with Metronome, it's fair use to use whatever I've been given. But you all can let me know in the comments if you think I should have reset at that point. I honestly probably should have anyway. It was probably going to be easier on my Elixirs and Ethers. With that being said though, we heal up, Ether up, and press on to Bruno. First attempt at Bruno and we hit the Hitmontop, but it hits back hard with counter, inflicting 100 points of damage. Well, that's not good. But it's not going to go for Dig because we're flying type, so it's content to just hit us back hard. We actually wind up setting up an Ingrain and an Aqua Ring on back-to-back rolls. That would normally be a great combination, but I cannot believe I'm saying this. We do not want an indestructible Togetic. More specifically, we do not want an indestructible Togetic that can't be switched out. We're screwed. Plus the Hitmontop starts to use Dig because Ingrain makes us vulnerable to ground moves now. Well, this is fantastic. In any case, attempt number 2 at Bruno. We have an adventure against the Hitmontop here, but it starts out decently enough as we put it to sleep and eventually bring it down. Hitmonchan is next, armed with a series of elemental punches we're weak to, and at one point we survive an Ice Punch on a Sliver, freeze, thaw immediately, and go into a Shadow Force, but then somehow we miss it. That's a 100% accurate move, and there are no accuracy or evasion buffs in play. Does anyone know how that missed? I actually paused here and looked it up to confirm. It is a 100% accurate move. I am very confused. In any case, we're not resetting, we're pressing on. And the rest of the fight against Bruno is really not great from a matchup perspective. All of our team are weak to something he has, whether it's Rock Slide or fighting moves. We have some bad luck against Onix, rolling 3 damage moves in a row that are all resisted by Onix. Eventually I get a Leech Seed, but that's not super helpful at this low of health. Machamp is out next, and we get a clean sweep into a Togetic, but after taking some minor damage we use Rest. I've been wanting a Psychic move for ages this fight, but this was not the Psychic move we wanted in this moment. Here's a helpful hint for all of you Pokemon battlers at home. Putting yourself to sleep against an opponent who can do super effective damage against you is not a sound battle strategy. After losing that Togetic, we swap in and get an Air Cutter to finish the Machamp. Last out is Hitmonlee, and I don't have a strong matchup, so I send out Snorlax, who wastes her chance by hitting herself from a Swagger Confusion, dealing 100 damage to herself in the process, and then getting tagged for a massive high jump kick. Hitmonlee goes for it again a second time, but by the grace of Algorithm misses, and does a ton of damage to itself. I will so take that. And after that, we land our final hit to bring down the Hitmonlee and secure us the win. We're in really rough shape again though, so we have to burn some healing and PowerPoint replenishment items, but we're nearly there now. Next up for the Elite Four is Karen, and she's on a mission to speak to the manager. And true to form, she just absolutely owns us here. I don't really understand Metronome's RNG. We roll moves that we've rolled 100 times already, while there are probably over 100 other moves that we could roll that we haven't even gotten yet. Why do I keep getting crap like Tail Glow? Why do I get 2 Mud Bombs in one fight? And why does one of them come against the gosh darn Gengar? Oh, and that Gengar has Spite, by the way, so the problems we had dealing with Morty's gym are back. We have to kill it quickly, so of course we just leave it sitting there in red health for an entirely way too long amount of time. Ultimately, we do get to our final Pokemon Houndoom, but of course, not only are we slower than it despite being 23 levels higher, we hit it with an Ember, which it's not only immune to, it raises the power of its own flamethrower as a result. And we eventually find ourselves out of Metronomes and have to reset. Karen takes a number of attempts, and it's just maddening how many times we get our butts handed to us by that Gengar's Spite or that Houndoom's flamethrower. Oh, and I did eventually figure out why I seem to keep missing a lot with this one Togetic. It has Hustle. I thought they all had Serene Grace, but that one has Hustle, so okay. boosted attack but less accurate moves. That's brutal in a Metronome challenge where you have to get lucky enough to even get a damaging move in the first place, but then to have them miss a bunch is bad. But alright, at least one mystery is solved now. On this run, we finally get to the Houndoom and land a Sky Uppercut to deal with it quickly before it can damage us too badly. The Gengar is still a problem though, as it drains so much of our power points away with Spite. Words do not do justice to how frustrating it is to swap in a full 10 of 10 power point stocked Pokemon, only to be able to use about 2 of those at most before having to reset drained with Spite. And we can't replenish them indefinitely either, so this is brutal. Oh, and we keep getting mother effing Trick Room. We got it twice in this battle alone. Eventually though, against her Vileplume, we landed not only a Pluck, but an Icy Wind for 2 super effective moves in a row to end it. Oh my god. We heal up, Elixir up, and take our hand at Lance. So let's just say that Lance is, at best, a tricky pickle. Pretty much every Pokemon he has moves that work against our Togetix like Ice Fang or Thunder or Rock Slide. Not only that, virtually everything they have seems to cause flinching. Why can Ice Fang cause flinching and freezing? What kind of broken crap is that? Oh, and Waterfall causes flinching too? Since when did that happen? I don't think I've ever gotten a flinch with Waterfall. I spend over an hour making attempt after attempt and we just get our butts handed to us over and over again. Aerodactyl is one of the biggest obstacles as it can just sweep right through our team with its Rock Slide since they love to cause flinching at a rate far higher than I believe it should be fair. This is ridiculous. You're watching just some of the attempts here. It doesn't help that our Metronome rolls just keep coming up garbage too. Stuff like Foresight and Tail Glow and Trick Room. Moves that I keep getting over and over instead of moves that would actually help like Ice Beam, which I don't know that I've had all run. And we're kind of stuck here at this point. I could lose, leave, go level my team up, come back and try again, but I only have 5 Max Elixirs left, which as good as those are not nearly enough power point replenishments to get back through the Elite Four to get back here to Lance again. I only have a couple rare candies too. We're gonna have to make our stand here at level 70. The line must be drawn here, this far and no farther. Finally, after over an hour of attempts, many of which I just gave up and started using speed up to get through because this was going nowhere, I finally get this run. Duncan is out first against the Gyarados, and it doesn't exactly start out well as we only chip away at it with strength and a resisted attack order before being taken down with Ice Fang. Madeline the Togetic is out next and takes a few Ice Fangs but sets up a Whirlpool and finally brings down the Gyarados with a Dragon Pulse. Aerodactyl's out next and it finally misses a Rock Slide. It takes a bit of damage from a secret power, getting paralyzed in the process. We then land a Dynamic Punch to confuse it and see it hit itself to bring itself down. Dragonite is out next, and though we set up a bit of passive damage with Wrap, the real star here is the critical hit Volt Tackle to bring it down. We go down ourselves in the process, but that is an absolutely fair trade. Sigimar is out next to deal with another Dragonite, and we get paralyzed from its Thunder Wave. Though we do nearly one-shot it with a Spatial Rend, we come up a bit short, but ultimately squander a few more turns with Paralysis, and then get taken down with Dragon Claws. Mapia is out next, but this one doesn't get as much in as we go down to a few Blizzards after getting off a weak Icicle Spear for a bit of damage. EA the Clefable is out next to challenge everything, and after getting paralyzed, it brings down the Dragonite with a well-timed Brave Bird. Lance's third and final Dragonite is out to set up a safeguard, and somehow by the grace of Algors, I rolled up an Ice Beam for the one-shot. Last out is Charizard, and Clefable makes a few token moves that don't get past the safeguard, and now it's down to Charizard versus Snorlax. We trade a Dragon Breath for a Fire Fang, and we get burned on its second one, and we hit back with a super weak Flail. Charizard goes for another Fire Fang, and we set up Calm Mind. Another Fire Fang is really starting to bring us down low, and we land a Shadow Claw to bring the Charizard even lower. At this point, Lance uses a full restore, and it's starting to look bad. But somehow luck is finally on our side, and we roll up a Swift. And not only is Swift a same type attack bonus normal move, but it's special in this gen, which we just boosted with Calm Mind. On top of all of that, we land it for a critical hit to bring the Charizard down with a one-shot and end the fight. And there we go. We've beaten the champion and we win the run. We get our team into the Hall of Fame and the credits roll. We've just beaten HEARTGOLD with just the move Metronome. And my god was that frustrating. But of course, the run's not over at this point. We still have the entire post-game region of Kanto we can do. But this run has taken so long already. So rather than talking about Kanto, let's just skip ahead to what you all want to see, the post-game fight against Red. So I spend a ton of time trying to level my team up to level 85 across the board, though thanks to some XP share mismanagement, I actually ended up with our Togekiss all the way up to level 100. In any event, Red has a very difficult team that leads with a Light Ball boosted Pikachu. I open with Snorlax, but you can see just how hard we get hit. Pikachu's Volt Tackle does 300 damage to Snorlax. Not only that, but we hilariously roll up a conversion which turns us into the water type, of all things. Eventually we bring down the Pikachu, the Blastoise, and the Snorlax, but half a win is still a loss. We're gonna have to try again. So after spending an hour or so of sped up attempts at this level, we're not getting anywhere close. Everything we have is weak to something his team can use. Why does Blastoise have Focus Blast? Why does Snorlax have Blizzard? So I go back to Elite Four and spend some time grinding my entire team up to level 100. I don't have a lot of other options. Once we get to level 100 for our entire team, we head back to red and try our luck again. And even at this level, the max level, we're running into a lot of brick walls. Again, we're weak to so much of our team, and we only get 1 or 2 shots off at most before going down. We do make it to his last Pokemon, the Venusaur, a few times, so this is doable. We actually had a good matchup with a full health Clefable going into Venusaur, but of course couldn't roll up something good like Fire Blast there. Yeah, we're just gonna keep trying. Finally, after a couple hours of trying this at sped up speeds, we get this run. Stanislava is out first and it takes big damage from Volt Tackle, but the recoil combined with our Stone Edge brings down the Pikachu and we're off to a good start. Blastoise is out next and we land a Cut and a Powder Snow before getting off a wonderfully ineffective Splash and being taken down by Blizzard. Madeline's out next but goes down in 2 Blizzards without touching the Blastoise. Duncan is out next to avenge it and Blastoise gets a full restore, but Duncan chips away at the giant turtle with moves like Peck and Flare Blitz to eventually bring it down to about half before being knocked out himself. Mapia is out next but goes down to a critical hit Hydro Cannon in a one-shot. EA is in the game now and Crab hammers the Blastoise before bringing it down with a double edge. Snorlax comes out next and we get some passable damage in with a Razor Wind before landing an amazing Fissure to bring down the Snorlax. Lapras is out next and survives a Leaf Storm on a Sliver, heals with a full restore, then takes a cut and a takedown before sinking EA with a Brine. Last out for us is Sigimar, who whiffs a Nightmare, takes a Blizzard, brings down the Lapras with a Force Palm. Charizard is out next and does passable damage to us but goes down to a Sludge Bomb and a Spatial Rend. Last out is Venusaur, who we outspeed and land a 150 base power super effective Blast Burn for the one shot and the win. And oh my god, that was insane. We finally got the win. I didn't know if we were ever going to get the luck we needed, but damn, that was fine. Man, that was a brutal challenge, holy crap. Now I know the pain my Drybread felt doing his Metronome only run. Jesus. I knew this would be difficult, but man, the god-awful luck we got throughout this was ridiculous. So many times getting moves like Trick Run that were pointless, or getting moves like Memento or Healing Wish, which just yeeted us right out of the fight. Holy cow. Look at this in-game timer too, by the way, 216 hours. 216. I also maxed out my money, by the way. Damn, I wish I could do that in real life. But back to the timer, 216 hours. Now granted, I play with about a 4.5 times speed up function, but even that still comes out to 48 real-time hours. And a lot of the main fights I did actually play at normal speed. It was really only Lance and Red that I bothered to use speed up for, since it was going to take us hundreds of tries to get. And the thing about the in-game clock that you also have to remember is it doesn't account for resets. So those 2 hours I spend resetting Red over and over don't get added to that total. So I easily spent over 50 real-time hours on this challenge just in the game alone. It's going to take another few hours to edit this thing and record the voiceover. I can't say it wasn't interesting though. I hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, smash that like button and tell me down in the comments and join me in my Bard Breaker Discord server. If you've legitimately watched this entire thing all the way through, on your honor in the comments, tell me what your favorite pizza topping is. And until next video guys, good luck and go catch 'em all.